I hope you're excited for the new Black Myth game, because if not, I might have some bad news for you. Now, I'm sure you probably already know this, but Black Myth Zhong Kui was just announced at Gamescom, and it sparked sort of mixed emotions across the internet. Some people are very happy for a new Black Myth game, whatever it may be. Others are mourning the loss of a sequel for Wukong, or wondering where the heck the DLC is. I'm wondering that as well. And I did an entire video on what we know about Zhong Kui so far. So if you want to check that out, I'll leave a link in the description so you can go watch it for yourself. But today we're going to focus on a different thing, something that could potentially be even bigger than that, which is that the entire roadmap for game science's next 10 plus years of video games in the Black Myth series could have just been unearthed. And yes, I say Black Myth series because that's how they refer to it. They are clearly going down a path where they are planning to sort of cycle through different historical figures and mythological figures, periods of time, and make different games centered around those. And I think we may have just gotten a list of a potential 5 more different titles that they could potentially make in the future. So how do I know that? Well, this all started when I found a post from Doolicious on Twitter, now X, where she basically goes through and posts a list of future titles that are supposedly trademarked by Game Science for future use, and they were trademarked way back in 2020 through 2022. Now, I don't know if she's the first to post about this. I'm not trying to rob anybody of any credit. This is just the first post that I found about it that kind of got me to look into this. And after some research, I did confirm that all of these trademarks are real trademarks, and they were trademarked between 2020 and 2022. And as you can see, they are all Black Myth titles, just with different endings, essentially. So it would seem that this is actually legit. So what I decided to do was go through each one of these titles and research the character or time period that is listed in the title, and figure out what these games could potentially look like if they did actually get developed. And I just want to say before we get started here, I'm going to walk through all these and give you kind of the brief overview of what they are and what they're about. And then at the end, we'll talk about what this could mean for the future of the Black Myth series. So if you are a Black Myth fan, buckle in. We're about to get deep in the weeds on this one. And if you're not a Black Myth fan, still stay. I need your views. So the first one is Black Myth Wukong, which we already know and love very well. The second is obviously Black Myth Zhong Kui, which was just announced at Gamescom. So we're going to skip over those two and we're going to jump right into the juicy stuff, which, and I apologize, I'm not great at pronouncing Chinese, but the first one we're going to talk about is Black Myth Jiang Ziya. So Jiang is actually not only a mythological figure, but he's also a historical one. He was a noble and a military strategist that helped to overthrow the Shang dynasty, and he also helped to establish the Zhao dynasty. On the mythological side, though, he was a prominent character in a Ming-era novel called Investiture of the Gods. He was depicted as a wise strategist who was also very skilled in Taoist magic, such as illusions and fire manipulation, and he could even ride a cloud. So yes, we could end up riding a cloud in a Black Myth game again, which would be absolutely awesome. You're not going to find a complaint from me there. He also had a rival that was sort of like a 9-tailed fox sort of thing. It was called Da Ji, and when I read that, I thought, well, that would make a perfect final boss or a prominent boss somewhere throughout the game. Not saying that they will use that, I'm just saying that it's right there on a silver platter for them. So this sounds to me not only like a very intriguing story, which it is in its own right, but it's also very interesting to me that he's very skilled in Taoist magic. Could we potentially get a more magic-based game instead of a melee-focused game like Black Myth Wukong? We shall see. The next one is Xiao Qi, which is a super interesting one. She is a beautiful ghost lady that died when she was 18 years old. And she was coerced by demons into luring men to their death, essentially. And then eventually she meets a scholar whose name is Ningsai Chen. And through his integrity, he convinces her to help him escape. And the two eventually marry after defeating the demonic forces. I just thought this story was super intriguing. It almost has a hint of a more sort of like horror / romance twist to it than a Souls-like or action RPG, although I'm sure it can be adapted to be that. I'm just saying the story on this one is what excites me the most. The next is Da Rong, which is actually not a person at all, or a figure. It's a period of time, usually referring to the period of creation. And some of the prominent narratives within this time period are Pangu and Niuwa. Pangu is a cosmic giant that separates the heavens from the earth. And Niuwa is a goddess that created humans and also repaired the sky after some kind of crazy catastrophe, which I'm still unsure of and can't really find anything about right now. Now, to be clear, we don't really know if these are the narratives or characters that it would be centered around. These are just some prominent ones that it could be and probably is likely to at least be involved in the story. But regardless, those are just guesses. I mean, much of this is guesses, but you get the point. It's just fun to think about. The next is Shanhai, which is a collection of ancient texts that were compiled around the Warring States period to the Han Dynasty. It's just a collection of myths, geography, and folklore that describe fantastical landscapes, creatures, deities, and of course cultural heroes. It's also often set in the Da Rong time period. Now again, just like before, we don't really know what this would be centered around. There's a lot of things it could be. It's more about, I guess, the entire time landscape instead of just a central figure, and they could put a bunch of things as like the protagonist or something like that. We don't know how it would work. And lastly, we have Shen, which was a 4th century text by Gan Bao, who was a historian of the Eastern Jin dynasty. And much like the other two we went over, it's a collection of supernatural tales about legends and gods and spirits, ghosts, phenomena, all the same stuff essentially. We don't really know, like the other two, we don't really know what the protagonist would be, what it would be centered around, but there is a lot of meat to work with. So what does all this mean? Well, first of all, these are only trademarks. It's not set in stone that these will become games at all. Studios often register multiple trademarks just as a sort of security type of thing, a just in case, because they want it reserved in case they want to use it in the future. And oftentimes there are trademarks that never get used at all. So we shouldn't put too much stock in all of these. However, I will say that we have Black Myth Wukong that's on the list. We have Black Myth Zhong Kui, which is on the list. And so that's 2 of the 7 that are on there, and in order. So I would think that there's at least some weight that, you know, some of these will probably become something. What they are most likely doing is essentially laying out a path forward that's not set in stone and can be moved and manipulated at any point, but it does give us sort of a window into the mind of the developers and how they are thinking about these games. It's also very interesting to note that these were registered way back in 2020 through 2022, which was before Black Myth Wukong ever came out. So it's kind of an interesting story that they had that much belief in this series that they were registering these things before they even put out their first game, which it looks like it might work out very well. Also, this does not mean that they are leaving Black Myth Wukong for good. As I mentioned in my last video on this topic, they clearly stated on their website that the journey westward is not finished, that eventually they will return to Wukong to either produce a DLC, a sequel, something's going to come out of the Sun Wukong story. So if you're watching this still upset that they didn't announce Black Myth Wukong 2, there's still hope for you. You're just going to have to wait a while. Anyway, I hope this was insightful. If you did enjoy it and learn something, please leave a like on the video and hit that subscribe button. Because if you don't, I'm going to have to write an entire text about how my channel faded into obscurity and then wait like 2,000 years for a future game studio to unearth it, just so that they can make an entire game centered around how you didn't sub.